Your question was regarding the ICT ministry, and particularly at teleposter towers, what's happening there in terms of staffers there who are said to have tested positive, and what are we doing about public officers and public offices where people are turning positive. The first part of your question. Let me respond to that. At this time and period when we are beginning to see that our numbers are increasing, as you know, we have evolved through this pandemic and through our trajectory. In the beginning, we were dealing with mainly protecting ourselves from imported cases of COVID-19, because the COVID-19 came from somewhere. It had to come from outside. You remember we had our first case of an individual who originated from the US, passed through London. So that effort continued to protect the country by making sure that those coming in do not bring in the virus, and hence all those measures that we put in place, the cessation of air travel and so on. But once the virus came into the country, there has been transmission, human-to-human transmission, and what we call community transmission establishing itself. And for a while now, we have had community transmission, because you can see we now have transmission of the virus in 42 out of our 47 counties, which means that we now have well-established local transmission or community transmission of the virus. And then, given that, therefore, it is going to find its place in many places. The virus will find itself in many places. Public offices, high offices are not an exception. We will continue to see many different places where we will find that there are cases of infection, that there is spread of infection, and we need to be able to move in quickly and try to stop that spread of infection. So if we have today infection cases at the ICT offices, I think it is not a matter of surprise. It is an expectation of the spread of this virus that we will continue to see it, but we must take the right action to try to contain it, to stop it by going in there quickly, identifying the scale of spread of the infection, identifying the people who are infected, and being able to contain them so that they do not spread the virus any further. So I think that answers to the question that going forward, the virus will show up its ugly face in many different places, and we should be ready for that. We're going to see that, and we should be ready for it. The second question was to do with our role as a country in the vaccine tests that are going around the world, that are going on in the world. Yes, there is a lot of effort globally on trying to find a quick preventive agent against this virus. There's a lot of hope that is hinged on discovery of a vaccine that works. That would be good, but vaccine discovery and vaccine takes a long time. However, there is a lot of effort in fast-tracking this, and I know that there are more than 200 different efforts globally at vaccines, but only a handful of them have reached a point where they are being moved forward with some level of promise. The vaccine that you may have talked about, where we as Kenya might be involved in, is a vaccine that is being tested out of Oxford University, and one of our institutions, the Kemri Wellcome Trust Institution, is involved in that trial. It hasn't yet begun here in Kenya, but there are indications that we will be involved at some point in assessing the efficacy of this vaccine. And when that time comes, we will let you know. But there is a procedure and a process for us to go through before we accept to be involved in a trial of a vaccine or any therapeutic product for that reason. And we have the structures and necessary review boards that look at that. Gina of NTV, your question was regarding the efficacy of our testing kits. And you also cast aspersion on the donations we received from China, which you say some places rejected them. Let me speak on the issue of donations. The very early tests that we did, and for a long time, for quite a while after that, that supported our testing effort, were donations that we received from the Jack Ma Foundation. Those test kits were tested and evaluated in our labs, and they were found to be fit for the purpose. And in fact, were it not for those kits that we had at that time as a donation, we would not have made the progress that we have made in our testing capability. I think that donation made a big difference in our testing program, and we want to say that we do appreciate that donation that came from Jack Ma through the Africa CDC and other efforts, and it worked for us. There are many donations that have come around, and when you talk about testing, we need to be very specific about what type of testing we're talking about. The standard gold testing technique is what we have said repeatedly here, real-time PCR, and that's what we use in this country as our confirmatory test for PCR, for coronavirus. Those kits that we obtained are for this test, and they worked for us. I don't know what the nature of the tests that were donated in a place like India and that were rejected were. They could very well have been some of these other non-standard tests, such as the rapid diagnostic tests that we spoke about before. But those donations have helped us. Again, I want to say that yes, donations, when they come, must also be put to scrutiny to see that they meet our standards. As long as they meet our standards and support our effort, we welcome them. The status of backlog of samples, maybe the DG might talk on that, but I do know that over the last several weeks now, we have had enough testing kits, more than 182,000 kits that we have had over the last 3-4 weeks. You have seen the scale of testing that we have been carrying out, more than 4,000, 5,000, 7,000 tests sometimes over 24 hours. That indicates that we have had these reagents, and we are able to continue with the testing. And I believe that we must by now have worked through whatever backlog that we may have had in those tests. Remember also that we have two different platforms for testing. We have what we call the high throughput automated systems that use a different set of testing kits, and then we have the manual systems that use another separate set of kits. So at any one time, it could be possible that we may not have enough of one set, but we may have sufficient of the other. And finally,